guys and gals, welcome to another episode of Haunted Gaming. This time we return back to Halo. It's been a while since we've done a Halo creepypasta. This one is simply titled the Halo Beta, so it's got some stuff going for it already. I mean, looking at the title, who isn't interested in beta versions of games, right? That being said, who knows what goes on in this creepypasta, but we're about to find out. So without further ado, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy Halo Beta. I love cut content. Not because it was cut, no, but because it's different. Sometimes it gives you a unique peek into the minds of writers or developers. Sometimes it gives you whole new experiences that, like lost songs or cut levels, I guess you could say. Occasionally, it gives you a new way to get your ass whooped, like Flood Juggernauts in Halo 2. I love hearing about the alternate ideas, alternate stories and takes, and alternate character stories that were planned. Most of all, I like experiencing the cut content myself, from hunting down bands, obscure demo songs, to playing beta versions of games. It's digital archaeology. As you unearth the old, you discover new layers, new experiences. Sometimes, you unearth things that change history. Think back a ways to when Simon Way first released the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 beta and now bears his name. Think back to people discovering Hidden Palace Zone, Wood Zone, and all the other cut things. Imagine how they must have felt, thinking of how it feels for some, when a lost Doctor Who episode is discovered, right? Think about how it would feel if you discovered your favorite band didn't release an album, and you discovered it. It would be transcendental. Now think about how it feels for those of us who hunt down these things. Think of us who try to unearth them. Sometimes you will even have videos of lands few men have tread, lands that people poured days, weeks, even months of their lives into, lands that withered and died, placed in the recycle bin or on old hard drives or disks. These lands were always the motherlode for those like us. In particular, I speak of Installation 04, a Halo ring, an alien-built ring world, reimagined and coded by Bungie Studios, a world that went through many revisions. Once upon a time, it was a crumbling relic, chunks already coming off of it. In that world, though, the Master Chief could ride blind wolves and fight dinosaurs. Elites had handheld shields, and prophets were a rank held by few elites, not a species. An alternate universe full of promise, and one that was aborted. In another world, Cortana's rampancy set in far sooner due to the flood of knowledge she stole from the archives of the installation. Mad with power, the universe's Cortana was to try to dominate the universe with Halo. This Cortana, a dark mirror of the main series' Cortana, was also never seen. In a universe aborted near the end, Captain Key's proto-Gravemind form would have been burnt with the cut flamethrower item, and his skull would be taken from it, but Bungie was so disturbed by the skull model that they had just made a charred one, based on real pictures of charred skulls, of course, and then a too was removed. But there's something far more grand than discovering that which is known to be. That something is discovering something which was never known, something that even the company never discusses. That is a something I discovered. It all started with the fatal act of gravity, the menace of all things. In this case, the unrelenting, unfeeling force murdered an innocent Xbox. Well, I say innocent, but I'm likely to die of high blood pressure one day due to that thing. So maybe not so innocent. All that matters is that I, a clumsy idiot, dropped my Xbox, a device infamous for working quite well as a cinder block. And something went wrong inside. It could no longer read discs. I swore, yelled at some things, tortured enemies in some games, and calmed down, before coming to a decision. Xboxes one day will be rare. So I decided I'd pony up some cash and get a new one that actually worked. I thought about where I could get an Xbox. Obviously GameStop won't carry them, so that solution was out. All the friends had GameCubes and PlayStation 2, so I doubt any would have sold me an Xbox even if they had one. And the town's annual garage sale weekend wasn't for several more months, so I was left with one option: the internet. I pondered the options and decided that Amazon was the safest bet, while eBay was the one more likely to save me money. As I was being foolish and even spending this cash, I guess, I decided to just go the eBay route. That said, I wasn't going to buy from shady old guy 6969 or anything like that, only highly rated, reputable sellers. I'm impulsive, but not dumb. Searching around, I found an Xbox cheap, with a buy it now price that was within my budget, and in addition, the seller had hundreds of great reviews. The description indicated that the seller was a former employee of Bungie, and that they had this Xbox taken home a while back after being given permission, and it worked like it was made yesterday. I quickly bought it up and waited for it to show up, which it did as fast as packages usually do. When I got to my home, I gleefully slashed through the obscene amounts of packing tape and lifted the Xbox out of packing peanuts. I would have lifted it over my head, a Link style, but I figured if I dropped it, I'd crack my skull open. So after finding the wires and setting it up, I plugged in a controller and decided to look at the hard drive, and I hoped in vain to find the Halo 2 E3 game in there. But I was let down. There were plenty of saved games from Half-Life 2 to Tony Hawk, but something that caught my eye. Under the saves for Halo was another Halo thing, and it just said Halo Beta. I did what any fanboy would do and squeezed it out and checked it out. It had an option I hadn't seen before, play, and I hit that button so hard, it could have filed charges. The game started up identical and everything looked normal. All the missions were there, all the multiplayer maps, all the everything. Everything was unlocked and all the description and names were the same. I did what seemed most logical. I started on Pillar of Autumn, set the game to Heroic, and sat down for a night of evolved combat. Of course, I did all the fun stuff like blasting Captain Keyes, and that was the first time I discovered a difference. In the normal game, Cortana shouts that you've gone rampant. Leftover writing from a time before the Master Chief was just an augmented human. Invincible Marines would come in and riddle you with bullets. You die and you go back to the last checkpoint. I often made a game out of it. Shoot keys, start stopwatch, end it when I finally die. And I'd gotten quite good at it, painting the Autumn's Bridge red and taking quite a long while to die. So imagine my surprise when I opened fire and the Marines just suddenly started dying. I felt bad killing Sergeant Johnson because, hey, he's awesome, but was still rather shocked that they were dead. I continued the level wondering what was going to happen next. All the Marines I encountered were, hostile, which is unsurprising, and I had to fight my way through enemies both human and Covenant. I thought back to Marathon and the BOBs. This was typical Bungie, letting you slaughter your allies for fun and to make the game harder for yourself. Cortana did her usual dialogue when we fought our way into the Bumblebee escape pod. However, this is where the next change occurs. In the original game, a Marine falls in front of the Chief, and the Chief makes sure he doesn't get left behind, making them the last two on. In this, however, though, John ignores the Marine and then tosses a grenade into the pod. He then climbs in and the seats were now filled with dead Marines. Like when the pod had crashed. John pushes the body of the pilot out of the chair and climbs in the seat, flying it down. Text comes up, subtitles really, with it indicating Cortana was saying, "I don't know what the hell was gone wrong with you, but seeing as we're stuck together, we might as well work together." And there was no voice, which makes sense if Jen had never recorded the line, right? The Chief replied to her and said, "Sounds good to me." Despite John's piloting, the Bumblebee had still crashed, and there was no dialogue of the pilot screaming as it went down. This wasn't surprising, seeing as she was dead, and after the level, Halo had started. Cortana said that with Keyes dead, the Autumn was completely destroyed on impact. That was the first oh shit moment for me, as for those who hadn't played the game, you have to blow the Autumn up to destroy the ring. Without the Autumn, that was going to be hard, to say the least. However, after that, the level plays normally, with the difference being that the Marines were still hostile. Despite that, Foehammer was not, and you still were supposed to go rescue the various trapped Marines. I wanted to dodge them and kill the Covenant, and they boarded Foehammer's Pelican dropship. As always, however, my Warthog was gunnerless, because I had to, kill him before he killed me. I finished the level in Truth and Reconciliation. The next level had begun. I expected to have to kill all the Marines, but instead, Johnson, back from the dead, as he often does in the first Halo, said to John, "Look, you killed Keyes. Hell, you even killed me, but we're both stuck here, together. So why don't we work together and take the goddamn ship? We can try to kill each other later, understand?" And this was subtitled, and did make a good explanation for why they'd be boarding the ship if Captain Keyes wasn't on it. At this point, I was actually pretty impressed. Rather than having killing Keyes being a roadblock, they apparently were intending it to be an alternate evil path, with what seemed to be building to a bleaker ending. The level continued as usual, and after getting some Marines from a cell block without Keyes, Cortana declared to the group that the Covenant forces were far too large to overtake, and that they'd have to get off the ship. Subtitles only, of course. However, the chapter was still called "Shut Up and Get Behind Me, Sir." A simple oversight from being in beta, apparently. After that, the story progressed pretty much as normal, with minor changes for the lack of Keyes in the Autumn, until we returned to the Truth and Reconciliation in the level Keyes. Now, in the normal game, the Flood, basically the Zerg combined with headcrabs, have been released and taken Keyes. And as I said before, he's being turned into a new grave mind. The Flood hive mind, I guess, for those who don't know Halo. However, without Captain Keyes, things were different. In Keyes, you're seeking to find him using his neural implants to donate the Pillar of Autumn and destroy Halo. And as you have learned that it is part of an array that, once fired, will destroy all biomatter in the galaxy, in this keyless version of Keyes, you're seeking to take the Truth and Reconciliation, or at least what's left of it, and detonate it instead. Cortana's humorous teleportation mistake was still there, and it was surreal to see them bonding despite this John's broken mortal compass thing. So I slogged through the level until one of my least favorites after the library had reached, and reached the bridge, I guess. However, there was no proto-gravemind. I was surprised that the Flood hadn't started building one, and then it dawned on me that there was no proper base for it in the universe. With so few Marines on Halo due to the total destruction of the Autumn, along with the fact that Thelovotomy would obviously still survive, the Flood didn't have a brilliant mind to even start with. The cutscene, far different from the usual, began, and John inserted Cortana's chip into the holo panel. Cortana infiltrated the network, hacked into the systems, only to discover that, due to the damage, it couldn't self-destruct. The Flood began to swarm into the room, and John quickly grabbed Cortana's chip, put it back in his head, and tried to fight, but it failed. They swarmed him and quickly tore apart large portions of the chest part of the armor. Without it, a Flood infection form leaped into him and quickly burrowed into him. Much like how Flood infection happened in Halo 3, it took a moment to realize what had just happened. John was now taken by the Flood, and with him, Cortana, and with her, Halo's index. Without the index, Halo can't even fire. And I wonder what was going to happen next, as the game had now gone far off the rails. The screen went black, and before going to the loading screen, what started next surprised me. A large grave mine now resided in Halo's central room, in possession of 343 Guilty Sparks, monitor of Installation 04. Cortana's giant form was at the control room's panel once more, but rather than her usual color, changing while there, she was red, like rampant Cortana in Halo 4. The grave mine, speaking in iambic heptameter, as always, but only in subtitles, told Cortana to activate the slipspace, Halo equivalent of warp drives, and set course for Earth. The grave mine then lowered a tentacle down and placed a combat form on the ground. This combat form, however, wasn't even a normal one. Instead, it was a headless one, with the Mjolnir 5 armor that the Master Chief wore, repaired and on the body. Then it dawned on me that it was John's body, and the head was just kept in the Gravemind. Gravemind placed a helmet on it, and the helmet attached to the suit it normally would. The loading screen comes up, and I waited, eager to find out what would even happen next. And when it finished loading, Installation 4 came out of slipspace in orbit around Earth. The orbital Mac cannons fired at it, but to no avail. The hordes of reprogrammed Sentinels swarmed the cannons, destroying them with ease. Then Flood drop pods launched from the commandered Halo down to Africa, at what I assume was going to be New Mombasa, and it turned out to be right. The game went into first person, from the view of Flood John. And the pod lands, with him in the city, which seems to be a very early version of the E3 demo too. From there, the only objective was to destroy the human population, which was quite easy, as, well, few even fought back. After the first few city blocks, however, the Marines began to arrive in full force. Sadly for them, I had an army of Flood allies. They too were overrun and surprisingly infected. I wondered why Bungie didn't even use that until Halo 3, but figured they just didn't like how it looked, or it did look rather bad, I mean, let's be honest. I continued on, enjoying the darker outcome, and finished the level. The cutscene began, the Flood pods were shown launching down into the Earth, blanketing it, and then it cut to the Gravemind and Cortana. As Gravemind gloated, giving the usual lines about how the Flood were the good guys and the next step for all the species, Cortana flickered blue several times before saying that anyways. She pulled out the index and teleported Sergeant John onto the bridge, who according to, Halo lore, is immune to the Flood. She gave Johnson the index, as only a human can activate a Halo, and told him to activate it quick, before she said. John, no, that thing, noticed. As it was once more subtitles. I assume she whispered it, maybe? Johnson activated the Halo, and firing began, and the Gravemind finally catching on, far too late, it showed all 7 Halos activating, and then shockingly a shot of the Ark, although not nearly as pretty as it was in Halo 3. They fired, and it showed all the various species that were in the first Halo being, disintegrated in various locations, even places like High Charity and Sanghelios. As this finished, it cut to Cortana, flickering red, blue, and purple, her default color in the first Halo, by the way. Sitting down, looking around the desolate installation. For the first time in a while, she speaks, with actual dialogue. Somberly, she says, "I have defiled gods and demons. I'm your shield, I'm your sword," it asked. And I answered, "For a moment of safety, I loose damnation on the stars. This is the way the world ends. And I'm a monument to all your sins." The credit rolls, playing what sounded like an early version of the Halo 2 track Never Forget. Cortana flickered in the background. My mind was blown, interpretations raced through my head, and I quickly went to the mission select to do it on Legendary, as the games always have a slightly different end on Legendary. And to my anger, the alternate final mission was absent. Dedicated and obsessive, I started up Pillar of Autumn on Legendary and killed Keys, fighting through the entire game. As the credits ended once more, I realized it was, and had been slowly zooming in on Cortana, and her face filled the screen. She whispers, "I see you," and giggles. Startled, I let out a shriek, and then I laughed. One good prank by Bungie for the most dedicated players, I guess, and one legendary ending, an elite gropes Johnson, and in the other, Cortana scares the shit out of you. And I was impressed, but saddened that the alternate story was cut. But you could never make a sequel out of that, so chances are, Microsoft must have told them to remove it. I messaged the seller on eBay and told him about the forgotten save data, and he messaged back, asking if I had discovered the secret yet. And after telling him yes, he sent back a smiley and said, "Just so I don't get sued. For your eyes only, okay?" And I agreed. And I'm not going to tell you that I never played video games or anything because, hey, I still revisit that alternate Halo sometimes. And that was the second Halo creepypasta we've done. It was a while since we've, done one. Now, this is both good and bad. It's got the classicness we love, and for once it actually gives a creepypasta focusing, again, on a beta copy of a game and does it quite well. I mean, we've seen it before, but here, it's been a while since that's ever happened again. Now, there's nothing weird with the game acquisition other than having a Bungie member ironically be the one give it, which makes sense, but it also seems like a pretty big stretch to have it be one of the game developers running a hot, eBay account on the internet selling stuff like this. I mean, don't you think they would have gotten caught? NDAs would still exist, but regardless. Now, the actual game itself kind of felt a little bit like fanfiction to me, in a sense, with how the story was going with Master Chief being evil. And if it's one thing I change is, the usage of names too. People are going to get confused with Chief and Sergeant Johnson if they're using the same names, and you don't really want to make sure that happens. But more on the way things were being cut out, the things that were being present, I guess you could say, was decent. It was nice to see that the game wasn't totally finished in the story, and the idea of having a secret second story that's hidden in such a manner in the game would be kind of cool. And the idea of not, failing and really going off the rails with the story just by doing something that, normally would be beating off the path, I guess, is something that I never put Bungie out of the realm of doing with the original Halo. I mean, looking at how much they changed in even the beta versions of the title, it seems very logical. And to have a playable, somewhat build of this without any audio and whatnot seems pretty realistic. But then again, it's a tad too different. And now, what could have helped here is some media such as the Sonic creepypasta Maria's Revenge, what that had, and if this had something similar, it would have been better than it already is, but for now it's kind of on that fine line. And also for the fact that the Xbox that's using the console, it's never really told that it's a development console or a retail console, right? If it's a retail console, there really isn't, I believe, a way to play a game like this right off of it, right? And that also just adds to the way this doesn't work. The way that creepypastas, I feel, work for gaming is they have to have a full level of technical realism in them, and they have to have a plausible kind of story. And it has that plausible-ish story, but the technical realism, it tries to do it, but at the same time, it doesn't really hit the mark. And with those, it's almost there, but it's a little beneath it. It's not bad, but it's definitely got some things going against it. But like always, I do ask you the same question. What would you rate it, and what would you change to make it better? This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, part of Creepypastas, and if you like what you saw, then please like, comment, and subscribe for more content. This is me, Mudaharand. I'm out.